A continuation of Part 1, Chapter 2 of Crime and Punishment by Fyodor, Dostoyevsky and Connor 500. For that's just the way that Katerina Ivanovna is by nature. As soon as the children cry, for example, even if it's because they are hungry, she immediately begins to beat them. Well, then I saw Sonechka. This would have been at about 6 o'clock in the evening. Get up, put on her shawl and her burniest mantlet, and leave the apartment. And at 9 o'clock, she came back again. She came in, went straight up to Katerina Ivanovna, and silently put down 30 rubles on the table in front of her. Not one word did she say as she did this. She didn't even give her a look. She just picked up our big green drap de main's shawl. We have a shawl which we all make use of. Completely covered her head and face with it, and lay down on her bed with her face to the wall. Only her little shoulders and the rest of her body kept quivering. And meanwhile, I went on laying there, in the state I had been all along. And then, young man, I saw Katerina Ivanovna go over to Sonechka's bed, also without saying a word. All evening she kneeled before her, kissed her feet, wouldn't get up, and they both fell asleep together, in each other's arms, both of them. Yes, sir, whilst I lay there drunk. Marmeladov fell silent, as though his voice had been cut off by inward emotion. Then he suddenly refilled his glass in haste, drank its contents down, and grunted. Ever since then, my dear sir, he continued after a period of silence, ever since then, because of a certain inconspicuous happening, and the fact that some ill-intentioned persons reported the matter to the authorities, something in which Darya Fanatskov played a leading role, apparently in order to get her own back for not having been treated with due respect. Ever since then, my daughter, Sofia Semenovna, has been compelled to take the yellow card, and on account of that has been unable to remain with us. For one thing, our landlady, Amelia Ivanovna, would not allow it, even though earlier she had herself given Darya Fanatskov a helping hand. And for another, Mr. Lebenotskov, well, you see, it was because of Sonia that entire episode between him and Katerina Ivanovna took place. To start with, he'd made the most persistent advances towards Sonechka, but then he went and took umbrage, saying, how could I, a man of such enlightenment, live in the same apartment as a girl like that? And Katerina Ivanovna made him pay for this remark. She took her daughter's side, of course. Well, and then it happened. And now Sonechka's looks come in to see us more towards evening, when it's getting dark. And she tries to make things easier for Katerina Ivanovna and does everything she can to help her. She lodges with Kapanormov, the tailor. She rents a small bit of floor space from him. Kapanormov's lame, and he suffers from a speech disorder, like all of the numerous members of his family. His wife has a speech disorder, too. They live in the one room, but Sonia has her own bit of space, partitioned off by the rest. Yes, they're of the very, very poorest, poor folk, who can't even speak properly. Yes, well, that morning, sir, I girded my loins, attired myself in my rags, raised my hands to the heavens, and set off to see His Excellency, Ivan Afanasievich. Perhaps you're familiar with His Excellency Ivan Afanasovich, no? Well, in that case, you didn't know a man of true meekness. He's wax before the countenance of the Lord, for the wax it melteth. He even shed a tear or two after he heard what I had to tell him. Well, Marmeladov, he said, you've already let me down once. I'll take you on once more, on my own personal responsibility this time. Those were his very words. But mine now, he said, and off you go. I kissed the dust at his feet, mentally, for in reality he would never have permitted it, being one of the top brass and a man of the very latest ideas with regards to education and public service. I returned home, and when I announced that I'd got my job back and would be receiving my salary again, Lord, what happened then? Marmeladov again broke off in violent agitation. Just at that moment, a whole party of tipplers who were already quite drunk came in off the street, and outside the entrance the sounds of the rented hurdy-gurdy and the small, cracked voice of a 7-year-old child singing The Little Homestead became audible. It grew noisy. The owner and his crew began to attend to the newcomers' requirements. Marmeladov, paying no attention to the new revivals, began to continue his story. By now he seemed to have grown very weak, but the more the drink went to his head, the more eager he became to talk. It happens to us all. The memories of his recent success in this field of work seemed to have enlivened him, and were even reflected in his features by a kind of radiance. Raskolnikov listened closely. Well, my dear sir, this was 5 weeks ago. Yes, as soon as the two of them, Katerina Ivanovna and Sonechka, heard the news, Lord, it was though I had been spirited away to paradise. Before, I would lie around like a brute and get nothing but abuse. But now they went around on tiptoe, keeping the children quiet. Semyon Zakara is tired after his work. He's having a rest. Shush. They would bring me coffee before I went off in the morning. They even boiled cream for me. They began serving me with real cream. Can you imagine? And how they managed to scrape together the money to buy me a decent uniform. 11 rubles and 50 kopecks it cost. I simply do not understand. Boots, calico shirt fronts of the most magnificent quality, a uniform jacket. They got together the whole lot for 11 rubles 50, and all in the most excellent condition, sir. On the first day I got back from work, I saw that Katerina Ivanovna had made 2 courses for dinner. Soup and salt beef with horseradish sauce. Something previously quite unheard of. She has no dresses. I mean none at all, sir. Yet now she looked as though she was going out visiting, all dressed up smart. And it wasn't that she made do with what she had, for she quite simply had nothing. She'd done her hair up nicely, put on a clean little collar and oversleeves, and she looked quite a different person, younger and prettier. My little dove Sonechka had only been helping us out with money, but now she said she didn't think it was a good idea for her to come and see us too often, and she'd only drop in after dark when no one would see her. Can you imagine? I went to have a nap after dinner, and would you believe it, Katerina Ivanovna hadn't been able to resist temptation. A week earlier she'd quarrelled in the worst kind of way with Amelia Ivanovna, our landlady, and now she asked her in for a cup of coffee. 2 hours they sat, whispering all the time. Semyon Zakara is working again and drawing his salary. He went to see His Excellency, and His Excellency came out in person. told all of the others to wait, and led Semyon Zakaria by the arm past them all into the office. Can you imagine, can you imagine? Well, of course, Semyon Zakaria, he said, bearing in mind the services you have rendered to us in the past, and even though you have been indulging in that frivolous foible of yours, since now you're ready to make a promise, and since moreover things have been going badly for us in your absence, can you imagine, can you imagine? I now rely upon your word of honour, he said. In other words, I tell you, she'd gone and made up a whole long story, and not out of silliness, but because she wanted to do a bit of boasting, sir. Basically, his wife's proud of him for getting his job back, and yeah. No, sir, she believes it all herself even. She amuses herself with her own imagination. I swear to God, sir. And I don't condemn her, no, that I do not condemn. And a week ago, when I brought home my first pay packet, 23 rubles and 40 kopecks, home with me intact, she called me her little minnow. There, my little minnow, she said. I hope you all have the loveliest of evening. It's been a pleasure to read to whoever watches this. Thank you.